In this video we're going to talk about the emergency stop. The emergency stop is something that may be required on the driving test, similar to any of the manoeuvres, so there's no guarantee that they're going to ask you to do it, but they may ask you to do it, so you need to know how to do it. But I mean, obviously this has a real world practical use as well, because if you pass your test and you're driving along the road and something happens, you need to know how to stop the car in an emergency safely. So we're going to go over how to do that and how it will be done on the driving test and what's expected as well. So on the driving test, what they will do is they'll ask you to pull over, and then they'll explain to you what you're about to do. So they'll say something like, in a moment I'd like you to perform the emergency stop. When I give you the sign stop, they may raise their hand like a stop sign at that point. When I give you the sign to stop, or give you the command to stop, then I'd like you to stop the car as quickly as possible and as under control as you can. And then once you're happy with that, then you can move on again when it's safe. And that's it. Sounds easy, and it's actually not too difficult as long as you do things the right way. So what's expected? They're going to expect you to drive like normal. So they don't want you to start driving really slow just because you're anticipating them telling you to perform the emergency stop. So just drive like normal. So for example, if the road's open, straight and clear, and it's a 30 road, then try not to hesitate. Try to just pick up the speed and show a little bit of confidence if you can. The examiner will generally check round to make sure it's safe before telling you to stop, so they won't ask you to do it on a really busy road, or if there's somebody sort of following you, they're not going to ask you to do it in a dangerous place. So it will generally be quite a open, clear area before they ask you to stop the car. So let's move on to the next one. So let's just say the examiner has checked round, made sure it's safe, and then they've turned back round and they've told you to stop. So what you're going to do at that point is you're going to keep your, you can see is that point that it's taking you to stop there. Okay, so what you're going to do at that point is you're going to brake firmly and progressively. So what does that mean? That means we don't want to stomp on the brake, we don't want to slam it on, okay, because if we do that, then the car could start to skid and we could lose control of the car. So we're trying to brake progressively and firmly, okay, and we don't want to ease up at the end. So don't think of it as a way to brake, you know, like for example, if you're driving up to traffic lights and it suddenly changes and you brake quickly but smoothly and progressively and ease up a little bit at the end to make it a nice smooth stop. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about stopping as quickly as we can and as under control as possible, without easing up at the end. So imagine a child's just stepped in the road. You're not going to have time to brake smoothly and gently and beautifully like we usually require you to do. We need to stop the car as soon as possible. So we're going to brake firmly and progressively, and we're not going to ease up at the end. We're going to keep our hands, both hands on the wheel, so we don't want our hands to go anywhere else at that point. We just want to be focused in the control of the car, keeping the car nice and straight. We don't want to look anywhere else at that point. We want to just look to where we're trying to go. So for example, again, if a kid stepped out in the road, we'd be looking at the kid to try and measure how much braking we need and how we can react to what's going on in front of us, whether we need to brake firmer or, you know, we've got it under control, but we're basically looking at the object that we're braking against. We won't check our mirrors, so no mirrors in this maneuver. As opposed to all the other things that we've been talking about up till now, all the other subjects, but we won't have time for that. If you imagine it's an emergency, again, you don't want your eyes to go anywhere else. You just want your eyes on the emergency. At the same time, a typical learner mistake on lessons and on a driving test could be that they turn to the instructor or the examiner just to sort of gauge a little bit of reaction. Okay, but that's wrong. Shouldn't be doing that. Like, eyes on the road, don't look anywhere else. Okay, really concentrate on stopping the car. Okay, so now let's say we've stopped the car nicely. We haven't skidded if you did skid, by the way, if the car did skid a little bit, and let's say the back of the car started to slide out to the left or to the right, then we would steer into the skid. So if the back steered to the slid out to the left, we would steer to the left. If the back slid to the right, we'd steer to the right. We steer into the skid to try and control the car and keep it in a straight line. Okay, so we've stopped the car, and the next thing we need to do is to prepare to move off again. Okay, so what we're going to do is, imagine we've just stopped in the middle of the road, we've taken a breath, the emergency's cleared, and now we're going to prepare to move off again. So to move off again safely, we're going to do our 6-point check, which you probably would have done by now in many of the other maneuvers and things, and moving off and all that stuff that we've done up to this point. So where are our 6 points? So the first of the 6 points is your left blind spot, followed by your left mirror, your interior mirror, so your rear view mirror inside the car, up ahead, your right mirror, and then finish up on your right shoulder. So that you've done a 6-point check all the way round, and once you're happy with that and there's no vehicles, then you can move off again safely. If you do at that point, say a car comes up or a cyclist is about to pass you, or I don't know, pedestrians crossing or something like that, just like with the maneuvers, you just wait for it to be clear, and then follow through the 6-point check again. And then once you're happy with that, then you can take off again, as you can see here. Right, so let's talk about some of the things that can affect the car and how you stop. So the amount of time it's going to take you to stop the car is going to be dependent on how fast you're traveling. So you can see on this chart here, which is in the highway code, you can see the blue part is your thinking distance and the red part is your braking distance. So if you were traveling at 20 miles an hour, you would have traveled 6 meters, so about 1.5 car lengths, before you've even thought about braking, and then it would take you another 1.5 car lengths to stop, so 3 car lengths in total. So you can see it takes quite a long time before you register the fact that you need to stop. So this is why we really need to be aware when we're driving, and we really need to anticipate, because the anticipation is going to help us in this. It's going to give us that one little step, it will keep us one step ahead in these emergency situations. At 30 miles an hour, you can see it takes 6 car lengths, so you're going to cover 3 car lengths before you've even thought about braking. Okay, and then progressively you can see as you go higher up in the speeds, it takes longer, 9 car lengths for 40 miles an hour, etc. At 70 miles an hour, you can see it takes 24 car lengths. That's 96 meters, so that's probably nearly the size of a football pitch. You can see it takes a hell of a long time to stop the car. So again, the anticipation is going to save us. A few things to remember: your stopping distances will vary based on speed, which we've talked about, but also weather conditions. So if it's raining, it's going to take twice as long, or it takes 4 seconds to stop on a rainy day, and in icy conditions, snowy conditions, it can take 10 seconds. So it's going to take a significant amount of time longer, but in those conditions generally we'd be traveling slower, so we shouldn't cover as much distance if we did have to brake. Condition of the car, so your tires, condition of your brakes are going to be very important in this as well, so we need to make sure the car's well maintained. Another thing to consider is anti-locking braking systems, ABS, which means that if you brake, the car has sensors on each wheel, and what will happen is, if it senses one of the wheels locking up, to help you to prevent skidding, then it's going to release and reapply that wheel that's starting to lock up. So you may feel pulsing in your pedal, but we don't really change what we're doing in that situation. We just keep our foot firmly on the brake, and then we should be safe. And then that's it. You would have completed a safe emergency stop if you follow all these pointers and suggestions. And yep, if you have any questions, then do ask your instructor, but generally it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so I hope you found that useful, and I'll see you again in the next video.